Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Microsoft Office Add-ins Community Call. I am David Chesnut. I'll be hosting this call today, and let's take a look at the agenda and our presenters for today. Joining us today are Nikita Mittal, who's going to be talking about One Outlook, and followed by that is Sam Ramon, who's going to be showing a demonstration of Outlook Smart Alerts and a new sample. And then Maarten van Stam, MVP for Office Add-ins, joins us again with an update sample showing Excel with add-in with Blazor in a demonstration. So as we get into this, just a reminder to folks, please keep your microphones muted as we go along so we don't have any distractions to our presenters. If you have any questions as we go along, just type them into the chat and presenters and folks will answer those as we go along. If there's any questions we're unable to get to today, we post a blog summary about a week out from the call, and in there we put all the questions and answers, and anything we missed we'll answer there. Also, the call is being recorded and will be posted on YouTube, the Microsoft 365 community, within about 24 hours after this call. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started with Nikita. Go ahead.
So hi folks, thank you so much for joining. I'll be taking this opportunity to talk about One Outlook. One Outlook is an initiative where we are unifying our code base to simplify things for customers and ourselves and increase engineering velocity. It is essentially going to be OVA code in a native frame. We see this as an opportunity to deliver a consistent experience across platform to our customers, and then B, accelerate design and engineering velocity with the agility of OVA. So if we look at it, we have different clients for Outlook today. We have Outlook for Windows, we have Outlook for Web, Outlook Mobile, and Mac. And from there, we want to move to one consistent experience for our consumers. So here, if we look at it, this is essentially how One Outlook is going to look. Given that this is OVA code, like I mentioned before, this will be very similar to the current OVA experience that we have. So I think the next question we have in mind is that how does this impact add-ins and what is the roadmap for add-ins going to be at One Outlook and the timelines for it? So firstly, One Outlook will be available only on Windows right now. For the first phase, users will have an option to toggle on and off from the current Outlook. And hence, we will have the current and new Outlook for Windows running in parallel so that we can capture the user feedback. Now, coming to how this is going to impact add-ins, web add-ins will soon be fully supported on the new Outlook for Windows with no additional work required from partners. However, COM add-ins will not be supported. So we are actively working to bring web add-ins capabilities at par with COM add-ins, and we've been doing that for a while now so that partners can support different scenarios with the web add-ins advantages. And till the time we are able to bridge the platform gaps, you'll have the ability to use the old client where you have COM add-ins. We request you to share any feedback on scenarios that are not supported for you or your partners through web add-ins today so that we can start including that in our COM to web migration as well. Looking at the timelines for how we are going to go through this, we are here right now where One Outlook is in early preview and web add-ins are disabled. By July 2022, we expect One Outlook to reach the beta channel, where add-ins will be supported with most of the core functionalities available. We want to take the time between July and October to do full and thorough testing for all the partners where they can test out their scenarios with the existing add-ins. In an ideal scenario, they should work as expected, but we would still want to do that before One Outlook goes live fully in October 2022, where web add-ins are fully functional. This is how we are thinking of approaching it. And this is what we had on One Outlook so far. If there are any questions, we can take that towards the end of the presentation.
Cool. Well, thank you, Nikita. It's great to see, an improved experience coming down on the roadmap for everybody. So that's very cool. And I see there's one question in the chat.
If you want, we can address the question too, David.
Would you want to do that now?
Yeah,
sure.
So yes, the idea is The idea is that One Outlook is going to allow multiple accounts eventually. So if you turn it on right now, you will see what's available right now. There's a roadmap for the product to be including most of the capabilities that you have today in Win32. No? So the idea is that yes, we will have support for multiple accounts.
Excellent.
And one more thing that I want to add is that during this transition, while One Outlook becomes more rich, I mean, it doesn't mean that the Win32 client it's gone. No? So it's still gonna be there available. No, so they're gonna coexist for a period of time. That is right now not. We don't know what the timeline is gonna be, but they will coexist for a time. Now, so the other thing that I want to stress here to our community is that I want to clarify and well, not clarify, but stress the point that BSTO add-ins will not work on One Outlook. So the extensibility technology that you should use in that environment is web add-ins. And the team is currently working on a plan to establish, and unblock, the most common scenarios for Outlook add-ins. And Win32, we have been doing this for a long time, but now we are stressing that investment even more. So if any of you guys have any requests or capabilities that you feel that your Outlook add-in needs, in order to be moved from BSTO to web add-ins, please communicate with us. I mean, I will leave my email on the chat. You please feel free to contact us and have a discussion about gaps that you see. Yeah, so I think that was an important point that I wanted to stress out. Legacy Outlook, yeah, I mentioned that it will still be available for users. We don't have yet a time frame of when One Outlook will take over, or if it will take over eventually at all, So for now, the plan is that both products will exist. Harmony add-in, we supported. Yes, Harmony has web add-in equivalent, so the web add-in will be supported. And actually, I am working with the Harmony team to even improve more the web add-in platform so that they have similar capabilities as the com add-in. Thank you very much. I will just, David, if you want, we can continue the call. I just wanted to call that out.
Okay. Yeah, no worries, Juan. That was great. Let's turn over to Sam for a demo on Outlook Smart Alerts.
All right, thank you, David. And thank you everyone again for joining us today. So I'm Sam, and I'll be doing a demo on our Outlook Smart Alerts feature. Just a little bit about Smart Alerts to start off. So it is an event-based activation feature that allows your add-in to run some logic after a user selects send from an Outlook message or an appointment. So this feature is activated by the on-message send and the on-appointment send events. So this can be really helpful when you're dealing with some scenarios, like when you want to verify that your user is using the most up-to-date and correct signature, depending on what email or appointment that is. If you want a user to use a sensitivity label and apply that on a specific item that they're sending, or even just in a simple scenario where you want to check that some color categories have been applied to a message or appointment. And this last scenario is what we'll be demoing today. So this Smart Alerts feature is currently in preview on Windows, but we're hoping to also provide preview for that in the Outlook on the Web platform as well soon. So we'll start off again with a little bit about the sample. So like I mentioned, this demo will be covering is one where the add-in checks whether required color categories are applied to a new message or appointment that's being sent. And what dictates these required color categories are some specific keywords that the add-in looks for in the message or appointment subject or body. The messages do use the soft block send mode option, and the block option is what drives the appointments. So I'll go into a little bit more detail about these send mode options in the next slide. But before I go to the next slide, I do want to leave you this link to the sample that we will be demoing. We would love for everyone to take a look, test this sample around, and just to get a little bit, or just to get to know the feature a little bit more. So a few key parts of the manifest that's specific to event-based activation add-ins and smart alerts in general. So these add-ins do use the launch events element in the manifest. And within the launch events element, you do have the launch event element. that you can declare. Within this element, there are 3 attributes that you'd like to specify. The first one being type, and this is where you declare the event that activates your add-in. So in the case of smart alerts, it would be on message send and on appointment send events. Then you have the function name attribute, which is where you would declare your event handler. So those would be your JavaScript functions that would be running the logic of your add-in. And lastly, you have the send mode attribute. And this is what determines the add-in's behavior when its logic or condition isn't being met by the item that's being sent. So the send mode option comes in 3 flavors. You have prompt user, soft block, and block. With prompt user, this is recommended to use when there's logic or condition that you want your add-in to check, but it isn't mandatory. So it's more of a recommendation for something that's nice to have in an item that's being sent. With the soft block option, this is the default option if you don't specify a send mode option within the launch event element. And this is recommended to use if you want a condition to be met by the add-in, but say if the add-in isn't available at that time that the user is sending an item, you still would like to give your user the option to send the email. So you don't necessarily want to block them from sending that item. And lastly, we have the block send mode option. And this is also known as the hard block option, just to differentiate it from the soft block option. And this is used when you want an add-in condition to be met, and it is mandatory to be met before an item can be sent. And before we go to the demo, I also wanted to highlight a few things within the JavaScript file, specifically with the event handler functions. So first, within your JavaScript file, you will want to call the office.actions.associate method in order to register the event handlers. So what this does is it maps the function name attribute that you specified in the manifest with the JavaScript function name that'll handle the logic of your add-in. And within the event handler, you will also need to call the event completed method so as to indicate handler code completion. And this is what determines whether the item can be sent if the item that's being sent meets the add-in conditions. So in the event that the item being sent doesn't meet the add-in condition, this event completed method also allows you to surface that smart alerts dialog where you can add a message or an error for the user so that they know what next steps to take in order to meet that add-in condition. And finally, we get to the exciting part, so the actual demo itself. We'll go ahead and play this. So we will start by creating a meeting invite. And of course, we'll put in some specific keywords in there so that the add-in can be triggered, and it'll check to see whether we have applied specific color categories related to these keywords. So for this demo, the keywords in question are sales, expense reports, and performance reviews. So once we click send, because we haven't added any categories, you'll see the smart alerts dialog just letting us know that, hey, you should add this to your appointment. And you'll notice that the only option available to the user is the don't send option because we did employ that block or hard block option for the appointment. So the user will need to definitely apply categories before they're able to send the item. Okay, so we go ahead and click don't send there, so that we can apply the categories. And so we can use the built-in functionality within Outlook to add these categories to the appointment invite. But for this particular sample, we did want to highlight that you can use task panes to further extend the functionality of your add-in as well. And so we'll be using that task pane to add those categories. And so you'll see that those categories have now been added to the invite. And so once we click send, that invite goes through and the appointment appears on the calendar. Okay, so before I end the presentation, I did want to leave a list of resources that you might find handy, especially if you want to get to learn more about smart alerts and event-based activation add-ins and how to create these. I'll also add these links in chat for your convenience. But again, we highly encourage you to check this sample out when you do get a chance, play around with it, test the code, and adapt it to any scenarios that you may have. So with that, thank you again, everyone, for your time, and back to you, David.
All right, thank you, Sam. That is a really cool sample to see. It's great to see how you can use the Outlook Smart Alerts for those various scenarios. So now, Maarten van Stam will be doing a demo of Blazor in Excel add-ins. Maarten, you want to go ahead and take over the presentation?
Yeah, let me share my screen. Yeah, so welcome. I was in the last call in months ago already as well, I think, and then we demoed the Word Blazor add-in. Today we extended the samples with another demo, this time for Excel, and some small information about me. The research that I was doing on this Blazor add-in is usually done by me in a live coding session. That's usually on Tuesday and Thursday on YouTube. The address in the slide here is like youtube.com/softassoftware or twitch.tv/softassoftware. You can follow along with me in the live coding sessions if you like. And you can contact me on Twitter on this alias AAFVASTAM. And the sample is currently merged into the official Office add-in development samples repo. The address is also on this slide. And I think you also saw that with the Outlook demo. So last time what we demoed was how we created an add-in available for Word, developed in Blazor. So basically you're allowed to do your development in .NET and do just the Office development part is interop using the Office JavaScript interop to interact with the Office hosts, in this case Word and Excel. I will show this one as well briefly after the Excel demo, but first let's go to a screenshot of the Excel demo. It looks basically the same. The task pane is still developed in Blazor. So it's a C# front end with the Blazor markup. And in this case, you see a table created and a bubble chart. But let's not stick in the slides and just do the live demo here to see how easy it is to just start your development. What we can do is you just go to the sample repo from the Office add-in samples. If you go in there, you go to the code button on the top right, where you copy the clone command. You're starting a command window, and go to your specific location where you want to deploy your clone. I have a specific folder for that repos, and I'm making a folder there. Make directory 2022-06. What's today? 08. Demo live. And go to 2022. Let's be more specific there. 08. Demo live. PD command. In there, just hit enter and wait for GitHub to clear your download and get the sample repos into your machine. I can indeed copy the link in the chat, but that's a complete thing there. Let's copy URL from here. In the chat. Back to the download, the repo clone. As you can see, it is now completely cloned. We have an Office add-in samples folder. If you go to the Office samples folder, there's a samples folder inside there. And there's a huge list of samples already available in there, but the one I want to highlight today, that's the Blazor add-in folder. A month ago, we deployed it to the root of this folder, but this time because we now have two hosts, We created a subfolder for this, Blazor add-in. And if you look at that, you now see there's an Excel Blazor add-in and a Word Blazor add-in. So let's start with the Excel Blazor add-in. The path is a huge length by now. There's a solution file in there. If you simply start this solution file, Excel solution file, hit enter, it will open up your Visual Studio with the Excel project in here. Loaded project. Depends on the extensions that you have installed in your Visual Studio, how long it will take to load your extensions and things, because, well, that's Visual Studio. What you now see here is we have two projects in there. That's the Blazor add-in itself. That's basically the task pane that's hosted in Excel. And we have a manifest project to be able to run the project from F5 and start it automatically. Let's hit F5 here. That will now start building the Blazor add-in in the background, and it will launch the Blazor add-in as a server. And once that's running, you will be able to have that show up in the task pane. Usually the thing in what you see here in the browser is hosted on, let's say, Azure Web Apps or something like that, or in your preferred other host. So usually this is not running, but you only see Excel with this button in here. In this case, it just got started with your sample add-in. It got it. Now you can open the task pane. That will load the same thing that you basically saw here in the so-called server. This demo consists of two small demos, like one basic Hello World thing, where it's doing nothing else than going into your spreadsheet and putting Hello World in your A1 cell. The second demo is a bubble chart demo, where we can create a table on a new sheet, create a sample sheet. And when we hit the Create Bubble Chart button, it will automatically use the data from this table and creates a bubble chart from there. That's the Excel demo. Let's quickly do the same with Word. It's just as easy as the Excel demo. Go to your Word demo. Word Blazor add-in. Oh. Word Blazor add-in. There it is. Again, there is a solution file in there. If we kick in the solution file for the Word demo, I'll quickly show you the same thing. It will also be running on F5. There you are. Again, there's a web API, a website, and the manifest project. If I now run F5 again, that will build the Word add-in. Do the same thing. It will trigger both the server side as also the host, Word in this case. You have to wait, I think, for the website to trigger. There it is. There are more demos in this task pane. So if I go into Word now, we got it again. Show the task pane. Now we have 5 demos in there. I'm not going to show them all today because we already did that in the previous demo last month. But quickly, to make this a complete overview, we are going into the content control demo, where we set up the document with some paragraphs in there, convert the paragraphs into content controls. You now see that there's content controls. Tag the content controls. If you go into Developer tab, Design mode, you will now see that if you go into the, that's not the right one. If you go into the that's again not the right one. Properties should show you the tags on the content controls. And if I do modify content controls, you will see that the tags are visible in there. There's also an event handler option in this demo. If you register the event handlers and you go into the inspection thing, then you can see on the console that the event handlers are actually active. And if I delete the first content control, the first event content control, it's deleted from the document, and it will also be triggering an event in the background. And removing the event handlers to clean them up. That's basically the Word demo, but let's go into the background for the Blazor add-in. And save this. And as we are demoing the Excel demo today, let's go into the Excel project again. Let's open that quickly. What you need to do for a Blazor add-in is make sure that the Blazor engine is loaded after the initialization for Office. And what we do for that is going to create a module that's a convention for Blazor WebAssemblies with an option in there to run something in the before start and do something in the after start. Well, we are using the before start to make sure that Word is started to get triggered, so it's ready whenever the host is running. The remaining part of the project is basically a common Blazor application. And if you go into the layout of this project, you see that you can recognize things like pages and shared environments for instance, for your navigation menu. And in this case, you see the bubble chart demo. That's basically there's not much weight on the C# part here, where we just trigger create table function and create bubble chart function. That is triggering the C# code in here, and that in turn will create a table and create a bubble chart using the Office API interfaces. This specific demo is yeah, as I said, it's low weight on the C# thing, but you can imagine if you have more things on your back end that needs processing, in the end the interaction with Office will be a lot less, and your C# code will be extended into more sophisticated code things to do. For instance, if you need to do things like rendering 3D objects in your task pane, for instance, or you go back to your database engine to collect your data and do things with the data there. By doing so, you're able to do that in C# and not so much in JavaScript anymore. So your main development efforts can be done in C#, and that's basically the main benefit of this. As a .NET developer, I'm basically a .NET developer. You recognize much more of the things that you see in the Blazor environment that you recognize from your ASP.NET coding that you've been doing already over years. And yeah, that's basically the benefit of this. They are really starter projects, so you can clone them and get your thing going. Try pick up the samples and think of your own project and see, for instance, if you can take your Visto applications or your VBA application and see if you can do the same thing in Blazor, because this is much more closer to the project that you already have in place. And this might also be a step up for, well, maybe for the one Outlook that you see coming up, where the command-ins at this time are not supported. So yeah, the next thing that we will work on will be, I think Eric will be doing that mostly, is developing the Outlook add-in. And I also want to have a look at the PowerPoint add-ins to do the same thing and get a starter project for that as well. That's basically my thing here for today. And I hope you want to have a look at it and see what you can build with it. Because I really think it's, especially for .NET developers, it's a promising environment. Okay. That's it. Close my screen there.
All right. Thank you, Maarten. We really appreciate the community contribution you've made here at these samples to the Office Add-in Samples repo. There's links in the chat there that Maarten put in there to the sample. We'll post links in the blog afterwards as well. Let's see, let me get back to the presentation here. Yeah, I think it's really cool to show this as a path forward if you're trying to move from Visto.com into web add-ins. I've put the community spotlight slide back in, Maarten, just to say thank you for your contributions of the samples and the presentation on the last call as well as this call. And I'll just share with folks, you know, we welcome contributions from anyone out there that wants to participate. You can help us out on the Office Add-in Samples. There's a link there to that repo where all of the samples are at. You can create PRs or help with answering issues. And if you do, there's also a recognition program for PNP. Office Add-in Samples are part of the PNP effort. And you can get your own badge as part of helping out, the M365 Patterns and Practices Community Contributor Badge. So feel free to check that out. And I wanted to announce that we've created these community panels going forward. So what these are is it's sort of like you can drop your name in a bucket and your information will go into a database, and then we can query and set up one-on-ones with people or Teams meetings, or maybe send out a survey to folks. So like we have one for Outlook. So if you're interested in Outlook specific stuff and you want to get involved with saying, hey, I want to be in discussions around preview features or helping answer questions about particular scenarios that are specific to Outlook, you could click that link and go sign up. There's also one for Excel and Word and PowerPoint, and there's one for samples and docs. And the way it works is it'll ask you a lot of questions. I went through the process myself because I was curious. And there's a lot of demographic types of questions, and then there's a license agreement thing that you have to agree to towards the end. And then it puts you in one of these buckets, and then we can query the database. And like, for example, we might say, oh, you know, what kind of scenarios are companies with fewer than 100 people experiencing, right? And then we could set up a Teams meeting and send an email just to those companies or those people. Depends on what we're looking for. And that's basically what you would receive, is you would just receive an email invite to whatever it is, be that a one-on-one consultation or a Teams meeting. And I was going to mention also, this is GDPR compliant. So if you decide you don't want to be in the program anymore, you can say, hey, delete my info, and it will just remove you from the database. And so it's completely voluntary. You don't have to answer all the questions. I think a lot of them are optional. So definitely check it out if you're interested. And it's one of those, if you build it, they will come kind of things. It's a new thing we're doing, so I don't know exactly the form factor all the engagements might take, but we're exploring this to try to have better engagement with the community. So with that said, speaking of samples and docs, I have a panel set up for next week, next Wednesday, a week from today, same time, 8 a.m. Pacific time on June 15th. This will be a Teams meeting for anyone that wants to join, and there's a link there to join the Teams meeting just to talk about samples and docs. I'm in the process with on the doc team of doing some planning for the next year, and so I'm really curious to see what sort of problems people would like to see solved that are kind of specific to samples. For example, maybe in the VSTO COM, getting to web add-ins, maybe there's more we could be doing there, right? And then, so that would be something interesting to know. I know security is kind of a big area. I see a lot of traffic going to the security samples. Maybe there's more we could be doing there. So, maybe there's some part of the platform that has friction that we don't even know about. There might be something completely new we need to explore. So that's basically the folks of that panel, and that'll probably be not so much chat, like web chat, but probably more talking in person on it. So anyway, please join if you have an interest in that area, and we'd love to hear your feedback. It will definitely help us with our planning. So on to the Q&A. These are questions that were submitted on the Office add-ins form, which I'll have a link to that towards the end of the presentation here if you want to submit questions for the next call. So these were submitted, and I reached out to the team to get answers. The first question was, is there a way to create spell checking add-ins? We're currently trying to create some spell checkers for small languages, not supported officially by Microsoft. So a way to include them via Office.js on all platforms and applications. So yeah, this kind of depends on what you're trying to do. For example, you can't integrate with a built-in spell checker. So you can't be adding the red wavy lines as someone's typing, but you can read content from a document, spell check it, and then write it back in with corrections. You can do that in Excel and Word, PowerPoint. You can create one add-in. There is a way to create a manifest that supports loading your add-in into all three. And I put a link here to an article that talks about how you can configure your manifest, specify Office applications API requirements. You can also take a look at the Script Lab manifest, which supports multiple hosts. You do have to create a separate one for Outlook, though. You can't create one that does all 4 hosts. So you have to at least create 2. But that's a pretty big question. So if there's more information you're looking for, just let us know more about this scenario. You can go to either of those 2 links there for Office add-ins dev questions or stackoverflow.com, and we can help out more there.
I can add more details here as well, David.
Sure. Yeah.
Can you go back to the?
Oh, yeah.
So in Word, we have a bunch of APIs that are kind of designed to kind of interact with ranges in the document, because these types of applications are basically finding or analyzing text with a smart engine and then returning exactly what positions within a document need to be replaced with potential better options. No? So I think in Word, we have most of the capabilities that you need for this, to search and replace content with format and stuff. But the part that we don't have is the kind of continuous kind of sniffing of text, the kind of the key press events, so you can actually constantly be in the background checking this, right? So usually it's triggered in a one shot, and then you analyze, return a list of improvements, and potentially replace them. Check out the Grammarly add-in. Actually, Grammarly is, I would say, the biggest spell checker add-in ever created, and they have a web add-in version. Only works in Word for the web. So check that out. I think they did a great job of doing a spell checker with the capabilities we have today, and you should be able to do something very similar.
Okay, thanks, Juan. That's really great information to know.
Well, thank you.
So the next question is, what plan is there for additional events in Excel that will substantially improve its potential as a development platform? For example, hyperlink clicked, define name change, shape on hover, etc. So right now, these are not on our roadmap, but we'd love to know more about them. So you can go to the idea request site There's a link to it there, aka.ms/m365devs-suggestions. And yeah, let us know more about the scenarios where you need these to get your web add-in working. And the last question, is there any update on improving the Office add-in ideas management system? So on the last call, Linda joined the call and talked about how we're looking to change gathering Office add-in ideas so that we can have better engagement with folks. So yes, there is an update. We're looking to move to GitHub, but the plan's not finalized, so we're still working out final details on that. So for now, just please continue submitting ideas at the current site at the aka.ms/m365dev-suggestions. And we will provide an update on the next community call in that space. All right, so if you're new to Office add-ins, there's a lot of resources here to help you get started. We've got documentation, there's quick starts for each of the different hosts. You can install Script Lab, which allows you to play with code inside a host such as Excel without having to install a dev environment. There's also our samples, and you can get a Microsoft 365 developer program free tenant for the purposes of doing development and testing, which is super handy to have. And also there's documentation for Office scripts if you want to look into doing more automation style scripting in Excel. So please check those out. If you want to engage with the team, if you have technical questions, there's 2 locations you can go to. You can go to our Q&A site, which is the top link there, and then, or you can go to Stack Overflow, and all the tags for those are there. The team monitors both of those locations, so feel free to use either one. If you find something that looks like a product bug, let us know at github.com/office-dev/office-js. And if you have any future requests or ideas for new things you'd like to see in the platform, let us know at the M365dev-suggestions site. And of course, you can always send a smile or frown from inside Office itself. And this isn't the only community call out there. There's lots of Microsoft 365 community calls. So if you're interested, in adaptive cards or Power Apps, any of these calls here, please go check them out. There's a list of all the calls and assets at the bottom link there at aka.ms/m365pnp. And then finally, I'll just say thank you, everyone, for attending. The recording is going to be posted in about 24 hours on the Microsoft 365 Community YouTube channel. And you can follow us on Twitter at M365PNP or at Microsoft 365 Dev. The next call will be on July 13th at 8 a.m. Pacific time. And the agenda, there's a link to the agenda that I post about a week in advance. You can also submit questions to the Office add-ins form to that link there in advance of the call if you want to see your question get answered in the next Q&A. So with that said, thanks everyone. Really appreciate all the attendance, and we'll see you on the next call.